Today we're most fortunate to have Mike Costello with us. Mike is the managing partner of PricewaterhouseCoopers' Boston office. The Boston office employs 2,200 people with 1,200 in audit, 450 in tax, and 250 in advisory. He is vice chairman of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce and is involved in several other local business leadership groups. He holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Boston College, a master's degree in taxation from Bentley College, and is also a certified public accountant. Mike thinks of his career's progression as somewhat unplanned, but I think you'll agree that we as observers will find his story consistent with the position that he holds today. He describes his path to the accounting profession as influenced by a high school bookkeeping course and a belief that accounting would lead to employment after graduating from college. He delivered newspapers, worked as a cashier at Star Market, and at the age of 19 was managing customer service at one of Star Market stores with employees as old as his parents. This was his first management position. When he was close to graduation at Boston College, the public accounting field was experiencing a downturn, and employers were calling to cancel their recruitment visits on campus, so he took a position with a small accounting firm in New York City. As the economy improved, he moved to Labenthal and Horwath, which was then the 9th largest accounting firm, and at the age of 31 was promoted to partner. After 5 years in public accounting, he moved from audit to tax, and then in 1987 became a regional partner with responsibility for running a business within the firm. This was the first time managing revenue, profitability, and client relationships simultaneously. In 1990, Labenthal filed for bankruptcy, and he moved to Coopers & Lybrand in Stamford, Connecticut, serving mid-sized clients. In 1991, his role was expanded to include 5 offices in Metro New York, and in 1993, he became regional partner in charge of the tax department in New England and upstate New York. In 1998, when Coopers and Pricewaterhouse agreed to merge, he was appointed a co-leader at the national level to manage the integration of the two firms and their cultures. And finally, in 2002, he became the managing partner of the Boston office, the position he holds today. Please join me in a warm welcome for a fellow Eagle, Mike Costello.
When you break it down that way, it sounds like I just can't hold a job.
I provided a short summary of your career highlights, and I want to give you a chance to delve into it a little more deeply. And so I guess my first question is, when you think about your early jobs in your career, what influence did they have in where you ended up today?
Well, first jobs, and I mean, going all the way back to, I guess the early days, even newspaper routes. I mean, any job you take on, newspaper routes, Star Market, NASA, Braun, North America, a bunch of jobs I had, combination work study, high school jobs, or early youth jobs. Certainly teach you responsibility. The fact that someone else is depending upon you to do, to fulfill your responsibility, and that there's ramifications to them, whether they be a customer on the newspaper route or the chief accountant at NASA or somebody else if you don't fulfill the responsibility. So I think certainly responsibility first and foremost. Secondly, other than the paper route, most of them required some involvement of teamwork in terms of getting along with others, trying to figure out where you fit within the role. You're certainly not always in charge, but you need to contribute, you need to pull your weight. And the importance of communication. You know, with any job, whether you're going to be out sick, whether you're encountering a problem with doing the job, the importance of keeping your constituents informed. Again, whether it's the customer, whether it's the other people working with you, whether it's the boss you're reporting to, just keeping people informed about what's going on.
I can't help but ask a follow-up question because I was struck in our conversation before today about managing people that were as old as your parents. I mean, what were the challenges of managing diversity at a young age?
I guess didn't think about it as diversity at that point. It certainly was intimidated by trying to tell adults what to do. I guess I was 18 or 19. It was a challenge to earn their respect, to get them to take instruction from someone. Well, they probably had kids my age. It was a challenge. I think it required showing them that you weren't asking them to do anything you weren't willing to do. Roll up your sleeves, work side by side with them with whatever the task was. Some of them were pretty menial, some were pretty dirty, like mopping floors and other things that needed to be done before you closed up the store at night. Didn't think about it as diversity at all, but I'd say it was probably one of the best experiences I had, a combination of having to understand who the different constituents were, understand that you need to get them to embrace you as a leader in order to motivate them to get things done, and that there's no one thing that necessarily works for the entire team. You know, so whether it was a working mother, whether it was a father doing a second job, or whether it was a college kid several years older than me, or a grad student, that each one had their own little button that if you pushed it right, you'd motivate them, and if you pushed it wrong, you'd turn them off entirely. It's kind of like, I think that was the issue. It was just learning the dynamics of managing people of different types and different personalities, and realizing there's no one way that works for everyone.
You've been very successful, and I'm sure our students are curious to know if there's a notable failure or disappointment that you could share that shaped you.
Well, certainly coming out, it took me 3 attempts to get into a then Big 8 accounting firm. When I came out of school, that's certainly what I wanted. There were then 8, there are only 4 now. That's what I wanted to do. That was the path for the most successful accounting students. Well, the economy didn't work with me there. And then 2 years later, when I was coming back from New York looking for a job, went around, and the economy had improved, everyone was hiring, but again, none of the Big 8 firms gave me an offer. And then finally it took, frankly, the failure of my then firm that I was a partner in, so it was kind of the third time around that I actually latched on with one, and only one, of the Big 8 that made me an offer, a Big 6 at that point, that made me an offer. Other jobs I was contemplating doing were all regional. So that was a big disappointment. Did it shape me? Well, whether that shaped me or whether it was just an attitude of just keep going. Don't stop if you run into a wall. Don't stop. Don't let it. If you still have a goal, just keep moving. And if in that case, if I wasn't going to get the opportunity I was looking for in a Big 8 firm, then go find someplace else. Just move on. Ultimately, it's probably no different than choosing a college. You can make of it what you choose to put into it. And probably the same thing with respect to a career and choice of employment.
So the other side of the equation, if you think about your greatest moments in your career, can you describe for us a situation you consider to be in this category and how it shaped you?
Well, long career, so there's lots of good things. I guess certainly a number of client things, transactions, where I guess they would either be transactions or proposals where we're trying to win an account and won it. One situation, 3 parties coming together, each having their own separate accounting firms, all Big 6 accounting firms. It was unlikely that our client's accountant would be chosen. We won the job, highly competitive, took the best thinking, most creative thinking, best approaches and ideas we could have. And it took about 6 months in the selection process. There was the proposal. We were told we won the proposal, but the other 2 parties still wouldn't sign into hiring my firm rather than the other 2 firms. And so frankly, what they were doing was just dragging it out, testing each of the firms, and finally they concluded that the team we put up was the best. Other situations are on client engagements where helping a group of folks acquire a company, coming up with some creative financing strategies or tax strategies and other things to help them arrange to finance a business that they probably otherwise would not have been able to get ownership of and ultimately make a success of. Several engagements that were just, at the end, as I think about trying to relate any one client is not necessarily effective. What is probably more effective is when I look at the characteristics of the situations. Big challenge, difficult problems, maybe long odds, team effort, and clearly success. Everyone likes being part of a winner. You remember your wins more than your losses probably. But ultimately it was the feeling of the team, working extraordinarily hard, long hours for long periods of time. When it was over, as hard as you worked, you regretted it was over. And that was basically because of the spirit of the team in terms of It's like being on an athletic team. If you take a team that's kind of viewed as average, and when you're performing, you beat everyone's expectations, or you get to the end of the season, the final game's played, you've won the championship, and it's over. You almost feel empty, sense of loss. You want to, okay, how do we do this again? And I'd say those are the kind of characteristics you feel around really high performances, team performances, memories that just really stick with you.
Let's shift the conversation a little bit to how you manage your organization. How would you describe the culture of your organization?
High performing, hard working, high integrity, respectful, caring. I think that's probably the essence of it.
And would you say that between different offices around the firm, is it pretty much the same, or are there differences?
I think there are elements of it that I would think around the country, around the world would be the same. I would think around the excellence, the high quality, the high performance aspects. That's something I think across the board. I think we do have, and that's pretty much there. So the high performance, the hard working, those elements I think are there. The issues around respect, I would hope are there. But that now you're starting to get into real human interaction, the respect, the caring. You don't hire for that. You can't. You can hire for excellent students, people who'll be good accountants, good tax people, and you're confident of their skills to enable you to be competent, high achievement, high performing. But when it gets to the people elements, how do we deal with one another day to day? You don't. It's hard to hire for that. That's more, have you created an environment where that's just the way it is, and that's what's expected. And if you vary from that, there are consequences to it.
So what role do core values, in your case teamwork, excellence, and leadership, play in the way you lead the firm?
Well, I think that, I don't know which is which. Teamwork is essential, is absolutely essential for our success. And I'd say that while that's our core value, it's simply a matter of fact. We could not be good in doing what we do, whether it's on the assurance, the consulting, or the tax side, if we don't work well as a team. So teamwork is just a given. Coming in, when we're hiring, we're looking for people that have had team experiences, team success, and people who show the dimension that would make you think they could be the star or they could be a role player and they'll still be successful. It's just simply because they get team. Excellence, I think, has a lot to do with how we manage. We do expect excellence, and therefore we do look for high performance, and we do hold ourselves and our people to pretty high qualities, and therefore you have to manage to that. You need to make sure you counsel out the folks who just aren't able to perform to that level, and coach those who you think have the ability but just aren't operating at that level. So in terms of how we manage, we've got to be able to provide the coaching, and also to make the tough calls to decide when it's time to, it's just unlikely that this person's really going to be able to fit in and achieve what we need to achieve as a team.
So this is kind of a macro question, but what are the primary challenges you face in your job, and how do you deal with them?
Well, one of the challenges is we're a matrix organization. We've got a geography dimension, we've got an industry dimension, and then we've got lines of service, either assurance, tax, or consulting. Matrix organizations are complex, and frankly, it really came about with respect to the merger that we formed this matrix organization. The first couple of years were tough. I think we now have figured it out. It just requires a lot of collaboration, a lot of really good, crisp communication, making sure the other elements, the other constituents that have some skin in the game on the decision or matter you're dealing with are informed. The other challenges a lot of them are really around what's happening in the marketplace, the regulatory environment that's come about as a result of Sarbanes-Oxley, all the corporate failures that have occurred. Big change in terms of we, as a profession, we used to report and work directly with management most of the time. With Sarbanes-Oxley, it's really clear we're engaged by the audit committee. We work for the audit committee. We certainly have to work through management, but we're reporting to the audit committee and not management. And that has created a lot of stress among the management of our clients, who were accustomed to hearing everything firsthand from us, having much more influence over the dialogue and the agenda. And so a lot of the time I spend day to day today is around managing those relationships to make sure that that we're keeping the balance between the objectivity that's required by the marketplace and by our role, the fact that we report to the audit committee, but trying to work with management who are feeling a bit wounded because the relationship isn't the same as it was 4 years ago. And that requires some, just some visits and some talking and trying to figure out, where things could be improved.
How would you describe your management or leadership style?
Well, they're two very different things. From the management style perspective, very collaborative, lots of communication, need to give people the opportunity to stretch. So, delegate and assign responsibility to people, not just what you and they are comfortable they can do, but stretch them so that they can see the potential of what they are ready to do. So it's collaborative, just very collaborative. From a leadership style, leadership is all about, I guess, the values that you embed want to embed in an organization, the things that will, so I'd say I'm generally passionate about something that I'm trying to move the organization on. So I think you need to show passion, you need to show real high energy and interest and commitment to it. People need to trust you, so I think you have to be a very easily trusted individual or have done things to enable people to trust you, because it's really hard to expect people to come along and go down a path, make a change to something they're comfortable with and they think they're doing pretty well, and now you need them to go in a different way. No matter how smart you are, or no matter how right the strategy might be, there is a gap that's required for trust. And you need to really have very strong elements of having built that trust. Can be over time, can be by the way you act, can be by just the history of what you've done before. And importantly, I think, how did you deal with failure or mistakes along the way? Because you need to be able to, both on a management style, you need to have clearly people need to recognize mistakes are okay. Everyone's going to make mistakes. You have to learn from them. You shouldn't make the same mistake over and over again. That's a problem. But you do need to make mistakes. And the issue is, well, how did you deal as a leader when someone was unable to perform, didn't meet up to the skills? Did you shoot them? Did you coach them? And that then helps develop the trust that people look to.
Have there been any mentors along the path that helped to shape you as well?
Many.
Can you describe a few?
Yeah, I think that, again, my very first job when I first went to, my first job coming out of college, working for a small accounting firm in New York City. One guy in particular I remember, Jimmy, summertime public accounting used to be months where you'd sit around, you'd be pretty slow. And I came out of work, I'd worked my whole life, I just wanted to work. So sitting around reading just wasn't good. Well, I was on a couple of assignments. Somewhere along the way, Jimmy Anchin took an interest in me. I guess he was probably 3 levels above me, and he gave me an assignment that I thought, oh my God, I'm going to fail. I am not ready for this. It was so much higher than, frankly, a lot of what he was talking about, I had to keep asking questions. I didn't know what he was talking about. But he trusted me to take on a much bigger role. And it was something that I'd say a senior, probably, in our term, a senior, someone with a couple of years of experience might have done. But he stuck with me. He gave it to me. He'd come in and check with me. He'd sit down side by side. He'd coach you through, make sure you understood what you were asking to do. He'd give it to me in kind of bite-sized pieces so that I wasn't just thrown in over my head, but did a great job of just coaching, making sure I knew where I was going, had an idea of what this map looked like, of what the destination would be. I was scared to death. He had more confidence in me than I had, certainly more confidence than I had at that point of, was I capable of doing this? And probably many of the mentors or people along the way, similar characteristics. Someone who showed some trust or confidence and gave you some real stretch beyond what you really felt you were capable of doing at that point. But others that, some of them were formal mentors and some of them were just people you worked with and observed and saw how they did things and how people reacted to them. and thought, that's pretty neat. I wouldn't have thought to do it that way. And that's when you start to learn different people's management, leadership styles. A lot of that is just by observation, experience, what got you motivated, how someone helped you do your best work, and trying to figure out the attributes of those people. And some of them were not formal mentors. In fact, they may have been people I didn't really get close to at all. But nevertheless, I was still able to observe them. I didn't maybe get close to them emotionally in terms of them adopting me or anything along the way, but you still have an opportunity to observe and learn. And when you see the good and the bad in terms of how you felt, how others felt, and the different styles that you saw and experienced, those are all learning experiences, and frankly, they still happen every day for me. I continue to see people and continue to learn new ways, different ways of doing things other than the way I might intuitively do it.
People are the main asset in your business. What philosophy drives the way you attract, motivate, retain your workforce?
Well, we hire very smart people, much smarter than I was when I came out of BC. These students today they're incredible. So got to be smart, got to be hardworking. We try to make it very clear up front what the expectations of the job are, because you ought not to be surprised that it's going to be hard work and that there are going to be some sacrifices, going to be times when you're going to have to cancel a plan to go to a ball game or to do something else because there's a client matter that's pressing. We want people who are looking for intellectual challenge, they're looking for challenging work, they really have a thirst to learn. They need, so therefore we need to deliver challenging work, we need to deliver coaching so that they can continue to learn and learn from their mistakes. We need to just make sure that they really do understand what the culture is, what the expectations of the job are. We clearly need to reward them for a job well done. We need to be competitive on wages. We need to be competitive with benefits. And we need to wow them and surprise them sometimes just by doing something they didn't expect that is recognition for good job, the role you played in either allowing us to have a great year as a firm or for a project that you just completed. So you need to just continually come up with something kind of off the shelf, something that they didn't expect, that gives them an indication of how much you appreciate what they do and recognize what a great job they're doing.
You mentioned communication as one of the roles of a leader. What are the challenges you face with all the various stakeholders you have to communicate with?
It's communication is a challenge. There's you can send out an email, and frankly, 75% of the people won't read it. But you can reach the biggest audience, but it's not necessarily effective because not everybody's going to read it. Trying to figure out the right medium for the right messages. Voicemails can be very effective in terms of getting out a thank you, getting out some messages around a celebration, something we just want to achieve. What you need to do, you need to understand your constituents. You need to know what they're likely to listen to or read. What's the best way? Do you run it down through a team meeting? We've got lots of teams in the office, so you can use your teams and communicate through the natural business unit that way. Face-to-face is effective if you really want to move their hearts and minds, so that they can, I personally, if someone's asking me to change something, I want to know they're behind it, that they're willing to make the same commitment they're asking me to make. Can't do that effectively via email messages, written correspondence, voicemail. So you need to think about, what is the message I'm trying to get? Am I trying to manage them? Am I trying to lead them? If it's leadership, I'd say as much as possible in person, so that you can demonstrate both your passion, your commitment, and importantly, answer whatever questions they have, because with change comes a lot of anxiety. So try to dismiss as much of that anxiety as possible by giving them a forum to ask questions, challenge. If they just don't understand what you're asking them to do, think it's the wrong thing, well, get it out and let the others see what the challenge is, because they may have the same thought in their mind but we're afraid to ask it, and try and deal with it. Because hopefully it's a point of view you considered before charging forth.
Let's shift the conversation to how the environment has impacted the way you lead the firm. Since the disclosure of corporate scandals in recent years, what has changed in terms of the way you do your job?
I'd say first the biggest thing is probably transparency. both internally and externally. But internally, I'd say we're a lot more transparent today than we were 5 years ago about what's our strategy, making sure that everyone right down to the newest employee knows what it is, what are the tactics, what do we think we're going to encounter along the way, giving them feedback on how are we doing with that initial strategy, and just in every aspect, whether it's a local office issue or a national issue, being very transparent about what we're doing. Don't act like there are any secrets, because frankly, the rumor mill will take over and will cause people to worry and get anxious and therefore distracted about things that are not on the agenda. So it's very important to get out and be very transparent with your people, give them a good sense of where we're going and why, and what is it going to mean to them, and what challenges are we going to find along the way. Externally, it's going back to the issue I mentioned before. Our role with our clients is a bit different, and different in the sense of straining relationships, more stress in the relationship because of the role the boards are now playing, which is a great development. Boards are much more actively engaged around all the corporate governance issues and around the type of fiscal, financial responsibility of the company and reporting responsibility. So I think in that regard, we have to be very transparent. We have to certainly make sure we're candid with management and make sure that there's nothing that we're discussing with management that we're concerned about or any worry we have that isn't discussed with both the audit committee and the board of directors. And I'd say that there's a much more candid, challenging discussion between the audit firm and the board of directors than there has ever been in my career. And there's more time spent by the auditors in the boardroom than there's ever been in my career. And I think that's a very healthy development in terms of, if you look back at the corporate scandals, too often you wonder where the hell was the board? You wonder where different members of management were. You wonder where the auditors were. You kind of wonder where everyone was. Where was the adult supervision? And frankly, there's a very good, frank, honest, and challenging discussion going on in the boardrooms today of public companies, and that's a great outcome.
How do you instill a sense of ethics and integrity into your organization?
Well, we like to think it starts with our hiring. And you know, you hire smart students from good schools, you have an anticipation and expectation that there's a high degree of integrity and ethics coming with it. One of the first things they do, or any of our new hires do in the first day, is go through a course we call Navigating the Gray, which is a couple of hour program on real life issues that, I'll call them dilemmas, practical things that may come up in the course of a day. You know, you're supposed to charge for all your time. While a partner or manager tells you, you know, we're over budget. You can only charge an hour. If it takes you 10, just eat the other hours. And this takes you through okay, here's the challenge, what do you do with it? And we put real life ethical dilemmas, both internal and external, in front of the staff to try and make sure they understand from day one that you may be the newest person on the block, but that doesn't mean you keep quiet. It doesn't mean you just suck it up and go along with what a superior tells you to do. That you got to follow your conscience. You got to do what you think is the right thing. If you're not sure what the right thing is, you ought to consult with someone. And we have, long before Sarbanes-Oxley, the firm had an ethics office, a global and U.S. ethics office. It was staffed. It was headed here in Boston. It was staffed here in Boston. So our people around the world for the last must be 12 years have had both live people to call to ask questions of. So I don't feel comfortable asking my manager this. In fact, he or she is who I'm having the conflict with, but I think he's asking me to do something that's inappropriate. You can call the hotline, you can get some advice from the people. They'll keep it anonymous, they'll give you some guidance. To the extent that they think there's a legal issue, a criminal issue, you know, there's no anonymity around that. So you can get some advice. In some cases, they'll steer you back to someone else in the engagement practice to try and help you get your way through it. They decide whether to open up an investigation, and the ethics office can open an investigation without saying that it was Mike Costello who called, but I've got a concern. We're pursuing something because of an instruction you gave somebody. So we've tried to inculcate it into the organization in our hiring. We try to do it with some training. We do it with some tools by having an ethics office and a hotline and some ways to deal with issues. And in training on an annual basis, there are some ethical elements that come up to it. But when you talk about inculcating it Bob, ultimately, those are all nice words. But what the people are watching is, how do you behave? How does the organization react when someone does something you think is really a violation of the values? And if you are not consistent, and if you don't take action, and if you don't clearly demonstrate that it's unacceptable, then all it is nice words. So it's very important. The inculcation comes from really baking it in by actually the organization has to live to the values and needs to take appropriate action whenever they see a violation of the values.
So a related question is, future employees of PricewaterhouseCoopers out in the room here, what can the students in this room do to strengthen their understanding of ethics and their ability to make responsible decisions? You asked about mentors before. One of my mentors was a guy here in Boston. He used to always say to me, most of what you need to do to be successful in business, your mother taught you. I think he used to say she taught you at the kitchen table. It's around just, when you're doing the right thing and you're really comfortable with it. If you're really unsure, then ask. There's somebody else who probably has some more experience, a different perspective. So don't think you have to make all these decisions yourself. But ultimately, it comes back to really basic stuff around conscience and around what kind of behavior have you seen other people model, people you respected, people you trust. When you get into a situation, you're really just not sure. Think about if your family and friends were to read about this in the Wall Street Journal, and it's specifically about you and the action you took at this case, how would you feel about it? Frankly, anything may be picked up in the Wall Street Journal or any place else, but the element is, for those that you need to take an action you're proud of, that is supportable, that you think is the right thing to do. And probably the best test for any of us is, how would those closest to us feel if they knew the elements of what you were considering, how you made the decision, and what you concluded. And if you don't think they'd be comfortable with it, then absolutely call a timeout. Got to go. Make sure you consult somewhere. Most things, you ought not to be alone on any really critical decision. Any good organization, or even if you just got a personal, professional decision to make, or family decision, there's somebody else around that can help you. Could be a family member, could be a teacher, could be a mentor. There's somebody. There's very, very seldom that you should ever feel like you're on an island figuring this out by yourself. Finally, before I turn the conversation over to our students to ask you some questions, I have a few personal questions. How do you relax in your spare time?
What spare time?
I guess that answers the work balance thing.
No, how do I relax? I spend time with my family. I'm married, three children, and a son-in-law, so we'll call it that, 4 children and a dog. So spending time with the family. I'm a real sports enthusiast, just about any kind of sports, BC included. I'm a season's ticket holder for just about everything you can imagine when it comes to BC sports. Enjoy playing golf, reading, going to plays. Just those are the things that I do in my spare time.
Do you feel you've achieved a sense of balance in your life overall?
I think I've done fairly well. I think I certainly know that some friends and family members probably look at me and think, you're crazy. You've worked, there are long hours in the profession. But I think those, my wife and daughters would agree that I have. And it's, what is balance is, I guess for any of us to think about what is balance. It's hard to look at someone else and think about whether they achieve balance, because balance is what's important to them. If they think they've achieved balance, then that's their judgment around what's important to them, what their priorities are, and how they're balancing it. But I think I've achieved a reasonable amount of balance. Could I do more? Yeah, sure. It's hard to say you wouldn't have liked to have spent more time with your family, more time with friends doing other things besides work. But at the same time, it is a balance. If you're going to take on responsibility, it's not just to produce a profit, but it's to run an organization. It's to you also have a responsibility there for the careers of the people that are working for you in terms of continuing to grow the business, enhancing the opportunities for them. So it's, you're not just in it for the money. You're not just in it either for your own personal gain or money, but you've got an organizational responsibility. Things I've done to where I think I've achieved balance is from I think from the time my children, each of the girls was 5 years old, I was their soccer coach from 5 through probably 14 when they started playing in high school with each of them. The older two girls were close in age, so that meant I was living in New York at the time, coaching the local team, town team, and a travel team. So that meant there were 4 teams between the two of them. And so coaching them, and that meant not just on the game day on Saturday or Sunday, but making a day or two to be out of the office. And during the fall season, that meant getting out while it's still light out. So I'd have to be up in Westchester, or when I came back here out in Wellesley, be on the field by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because there were going to be 15 to 18 girls showing up. And if I wasn't there, they were unsupervised, then I'd have hell to pay from the parents and others if I wasn't there. So you need to figure out what's important, what you want to do, figure out what works for you, and does your profession, your career, permit you the flexibility? Is there a way that you can do the things that are important to you within the job without taking away or detracting from what your success is viewed as being within the firm?
If you could live your career over again, what I'd call take a mulligan, what would you do differently? I think I'd probably still continue with the same career path. Well, I would have taken the same career. I had no clue when I got into it that the path would be what it was. I had no idea how exciting, challenging, interesting an education would be along the way, or the types of things I would learn, the skills I'd pick up. I think within that career, I would have taken a foreign assignment. I think having worked overseas, both for purposes of experiencing a different culture and better understanding kind of the global aspects of a business, I think would have been a really good experience. If the firm offered me that opportunity now, I'd do it, because I just think that's one thing that's missing in the career. The other thing I probably would have done is, at one point early in my career in around 87, I went to New York to take on a regional role. And up to that point, all my success in my career had been based upon technical competency. I was then a tax professional. And in the couple of years I was managing a group in New York, ultimately I started to give up some of that client responsibility in order to focus more on management. And if I had that to do over again, in those years I would have stayed more heavily involved in the technical competency that had taken me through that point in my career. It's something of a security blanket. It's good to not get too far away from kind of what brought you here, if you will, and to stay connected with your people and to understand the challenges that they're facing on a day-to-day basis, both technically and in dealing with clients. I did get back into it a couple of years later, but there was a couple of year gap there that I think it caused me some career challenge and pain that I could have avoided had I just stuck to the knitting longer, at least closer to it. I couldn't have done it full time, but just to have been more substantively involved for those years. My final question. If you get to choose a next career outside of the one you're currently in, what will it be? I have to retire sometime in the next 4 years. That's mandated by the firm's partnership. So I'm in the midst of those deliberations, and the first thing that comes to mind is I'll probably do some kind of teaching. I have another, for about 3 years while I was a manager and young partner, I used to teach taxes at a master's degree program. So I thought that's probably something I'll do part-time, probably go onto some board seats. If I were really going to do a different career other than public accounting, if I wound it back, probably would have thought about being a lawyer. That was something that always, being a tax professional, you're about as close to being a lawyer without being a lawyer. Always enjoyed the analytical aspects of it, picking apart the law, interpreting it. But the issue was I was never able to then execute to it. That is, to create the document, make the purchase and sale agreement or whatever, to go and execute it. I've thought that would probably be the other professional career that would have been of interest. It's now time to turn it over to you, our students, for questions. We need the microphones. Anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Thanks for coming. My name is Aaron. I came from China. I'm a BCI first year MBA students. It's It's my great pleasure to have your conversation and learn a lot from your past experience. My question is, what will be your suggestion to the students who is going to graduate after after 1 year or 2 years? What will be your suggestion as a senior leader for us and expectation for us?
In terms of kind of long-term career advice? I'd say to certainly the issues around whatever you do, maintain the highest degree of integrity you can, develop the trust of those that are your colleagues, those that report to you, those that you report to, because I think no matter what you try to do in your career, if you don't, lacking that, you're going to be dangerous in terms of without the integrity, and the trust, frankly, just has a lot to do with your ultimate success. I'd say follow your heart. Choose to do something that you really want to do, because you'll be better at it. I think certainly throughout my career, the things that I always tried to shy away from, didn't want to do, I probably didn't do my best work with them when I finally rolled up the sleeves and did it. Those things that were fun, exciting, interesting, couldn't wait to get into them, and I always wanted to kind of perform it better. So I'd say follow your heart, try to find a career that just is a natural, becomes a passion for you, something that just, fits in for you. And think about what your values are. Whatever at different points in your career, you're going to have life events that occur, whether it's family changes, getting married, having children, or whatever. And those life events will probably always be a checkpoint to stop and think, can I continue on this path with this career direction and achieve what I want to with both my career and my family? And that's a healthy thing to do. You might make that last year on one assignment, you think it's in line, now you get an opportunity for promotion. The thing to do might be to bypass the promotion if it's going to detract from the whole of the person, all the things you want to achieve in your life. Just having career success is not the end-all, be-all. The issue is about having the balance in life and achieving in life in total what you want to do. Yes?
My name is Danny. I'm a first year, and thank you again also for coming. My basic question was, of all the skills, you've worked with several MBAs, I'm assuming, throughout your career. What's the skill you've noticed they've most lacked, and what's the skill you always looked for the most in them? And beyond that, what's the skill you would suggest to most of us to actually, you've got to learn this one skill, regardless of what you choose to go into?
I've had some MBAs. We don't hire a lot of MBAs. Those that we've hired have just been spectacular. Several of my partners today made partner very young, and it was largely the MBA skills, that great communications, really good problem-solving skills. And the ability, I guess the way I viewed it was, each of these people that I'm thinking of didn't necessarily have the technical skill to come to the job. That is, they weren't trained in taxes. They had MBAs. The tax aspect of it was simply a competency they could pick up. But they really had excellent communication, had real problem-solving skills, and had great ability to manage, delegate, and coach people. And frankly, if you've got those skills, then that just means that you're not just relying on what you know and what you can do, but you're getting great leverage out of what you do, because people want to work for you because they know you're a good coach. They want to work for you because they know they're going to learn a lot from you, and you're probably going to end up delegating responsibility to them, which just constantly challenges them and therefore enables you to keep growing. I can't really speak to something that they've lacked, because frankly, the ones I'm thinking of have just been really successful in our organization. But I'd say really good analytic and problem-solving skills, and the issue of being a great coach. Because I think that's the one point that all of us can leverage our career a lot better. If you're a great coach, people are just dying to work for you. And that means the best people are dying to work for you. Who's going to complain about having the best players, the best people working for you? It just means you're going to do your job that much better. Your clients are going to be that much more satisfied, and that allows you to move ahead. But you need to stick with it. You need to support them. You need to encourage them. You need to be there fighting for them when it comes time for promotion. But ultimately, that's better than a lifeline. I saw a hand back there before. I changed his mind. Here, over here? Yes. On this side of the room? Oh, right here.
My name's Aaron Breeden, first year as well. Thank you for coming. Building on what Danny said, I was wondering if you had any difficulty in transitioning from the technical aspect of accounting to actually managing people, or did you have enough prior experience where it wasn't an issue?
No, it's a challenge. It's totally different going from a technical domain to really management. A lot of times through my career, even though I had some experience at a very young age managing people, it was seat of the pants knowledge, it was instinct, intuitive in terms of how to deal with it. Getting into a larger organization, having formal responsibility for managing, directing, keeping them, it's a whole different ball game. Some tough lessons learned through mistakes, things you did and thought, oh my God, that was a disaster. You thought you were going down a very logical path. I had the benefit of a firm early, I guess I was maybe a young partner, and my prior firm actually put me into a leadership program, which enabled me to take some out of, while I was a client service person, each year for 2 years was given an assignment for a couple of months that was in a totally different domain. Took me out of my technical space and generally had some element of management involved in it. And then they supported that in addition with, I attended a 10-day program at the Center for Creative Leadership down in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I was in a program with Army generals, plant managers, just people from all walks of life. And that was probably one of the best learning experiences of my career. Because again, it dealt with people from all different aspects, lots of different technical competencies as a background. The one thing we had in common being there was managing and leading other people. And the way the program was set up, everything we did was recorded, whether we were in a team environment or whether we were given the assignment to lead a team. And at the end of the week, you were debriefed with psychologists, professors, and there were people in your group that were supposed to be either doing a primary or secondary evaluation on you for the whole week you were there. And you had no clue who they were. You didn't know how many of them were there. And so everyone was getting evaluations. So you were getting really great feedback from peers and colleagues, as well as seeing video of what your body language was saying. You're asking people to do one thing, and your body language just wasn't showing confidence. So I've had a benefit of lots of really good training by just being put into programs that were, at that time, considered experimental by the firm, and I just thought they were enlightening. Great opportunities for me to learn. Someone over here?
Mr. Costello, thank you so much for coming. My name is Ashki. I'm a first-year MBA MSF. One question I know is top of mind for a lot of us right now in the shorter term is trying to get an internship this summer. And sounds like when you were trying to get your career off the ground, you had aspirations of working for a big accounting firm, and you ran into some struggles in the beginning. I was wondering if you can share some key learnings with us.
Well, I think certainly today I can tell you that in PricewaterhouseCoopers, 75% of the entry-level class we hire every year are students who did internships with us the prior year. So the numbers of jobs we're interviewing for in fall is minimal. It's 25% because 75% of them are already filled. If you can get an internship, you absolutely ought to do it. If you have an opportunity, if not an internship in your chosen field, just get out into some kind of a work assignment. Because frankly, the experience is invaluable. Taking some of the classwork and being able to actually put it to work in some way is, I think, just gives you a leg up when it comes time to interview and to demonstrate to the organization you're interviewing with that you've got, that you've really, besides having good grades, you've actually been in a situation where you've had the opportunity to try to implement some of the tools you've learned. I'd say, be aggressive, look for lots of different opportunities. Many of us, I look back now, I've been in this profession for 35 years. I figured I was going to be in it for 3. So frankly, what was I looking for? I was looking for a job. I wanted to make some money, wanted to get started on a career, and I'd figure it all out later. And here I am 35 years later. I've been with a couple of different firms, but I'm in the same profession. It went in directions I never would have imagined. So I'd say just don't narrow yourself down so much by being absolutely positively sure there's one thing you want to do. Just explore some other things, because frankly, you may not be able to imagine today what some of those other opportunities might lead you to in the future. Another one. Oh, there's one back here.
Hi, my name is Jessica Wesson. I'm a first-year MBA student. I want to thank you as well for coming to speak to us today. One of the questions I had is earlier you identified 3 characteristics that you looked for in your employees, that they wanted to be challenged, that they were intelligent, and they were hardworking. What are some indicators that you look for in a new hire that would maybe display these characteristics, and how can we differentiate ourselves to show that we have those qualities?
Great question. I don't want to give away too many secrets, because some of you may be interviewing with a PwC interviewer, and I don't want to get you too well prepared for that, because frankly, the way we interview is, we have identified 12 core competencies that we think lead to success in the PricewaterhouseCoopers environment. And so on campus, we do one screening, kind of for the basic person. But then when you get in the office, different people you interview with are specifically assigned some competency area to be looking for. So that at the end of the on-campus and the office interview, we have someone in the interview team has assessed the competencies that we're looking for. The way you do it is, it's not that hard. I want to know, when I'm interviewing you, I want to know about you as a person. I'm going to ask you about just things that, tell me about some achievement, something you're really proud of. I want to know what makes you tick, what you're really proud of. What was the nature of that thing? Trying to figure out, well, what was she proudest of? Was it that her name got in the newspaper? Was it the team experience? Was, try to get to the soul of the person to understand, from their achievements, from their experiences, from their work product, the essence of what characteristics do they seem to display. I'm not going to ask you technical accounting issues, because frankly, as I said with respect to the MBA student that comes to us without the technical skills, they can learn that. But how effective you have been in team situations. Somewhere in your life, you've either been on a team or you haven't been on a team. Being on a team might have been an MBA project that you worked on this semester, or it may have been a sports team you played on, or some other activity. So we just think, I guess, going into an interview, reflect on things you're proud of, reflect on achievements you have made, that you've had. I don't care if it was when you were 12 years old. If it's something you still remember, that you're still proud of, then I'm probably going to probe around trying to understand what is it that makes you really proud, that makes you really remember that. Because ultimately, we're hiring a person. We're not hiring an accountant, we're hiring a person. The person needs to fit in our organization. If they're going to be successful. We want to know that when we hire them coming in, that it's most likely they have the opportunity to succeed. And that's about the person. If you're coming out of Boston College with a high grade point average, with the kind of courses we're looking for, you either have all the training you need or it's going to be supplemented within the firm anyway. But all these other elements around, high performance, hardworking, how are you in a team environment, do you really strive for excellence, all those things, that's about you as a person. So make sure that when you walk out of an interview, have a couple of things that are on a short list that come hell or high water before you leave that room, you're going to make me know. If I didn't ask about it, then you're going to shove it in my face in that last 2 minutes, because there's got to be certain elements about you as a person that if the questions didn't lead you there, you've got to get it on the table. Sometimes I've had interviews where the best conversation was that last minute or two, and I just, I got to invite this person back in. So give some thought to it. Don't just go in and think you're having a casual conversation. Take some real introspection, some understanding of yourself. Think about what's really worked for you. And it isn't, yeah, you got to sell yourself a bit, but the selling is about be yourself. Be yourself, but you need to understand what makes you tick. And ultimately, you want to transport that knowledge over to the interviewer. You're either going to fit or not fit, based on that. Did you have another question?
Thank you again. I know you probably worked, going as high up as you have in your company, you probably worked with a lot of really accomplished people, and sometimes that can cause a conflict amongst people with extreme amounts of power You ever had a time where you've actually butted heads or basically had a large conflict with someone who had equal power, you had to basically resolve it? Or to a point you didn't have that kind of experience, where you actually had to mediate and actually deal with people with these accomplished people to this extent, that could become a problem.
One of the day-to-day challenges is dealing with that conflict, particularly of people, each strongly opinionated, each very talented, but just having different points of view. And that's frankly one of the things that managers have to do all the time, is to try to resolve those issues. I wish I could tell you that there's any secret to it, other than intervening, trying to make sure the two don't kill themselves, so trying to intervene early enough that they don't destroy their relationships with one another. Because frankly, whether you're within the organization or whether you have this dialogue going on with a client on the outside, you don't want a conflict. If there's a relationship there, either between the organizations or between the people, where they need to continue to deal with each other beyond today, you don't want a single issue to destroy that relationship or create real harm in being able to put it back in place. So consequently, intervening early enough, getting the people, one, you be a good listener yourself as you're trying to intervene, and trying to get each of them to kind of open up their mind to other possibilities. Frequently, the simple entry of a third person adds a third point of view, right? You've got your point of view, professor's got his. Just by me coming to the table and having some different dimension means all three of us are probably going to open our minds a little bit, and it makes it easier to compromise for everybody. It's amazing how an intervention by a third person just changes the dynamics enough that you can come to resolution. But if you let those two go head to head for too long, one, the intervention may not work, or even if it works, there may be enough damage done in the relationship that they really aren't going to be good colleagues with one another. And that's a shame, and that ought not to happen. I'd say it's an organizational failure if that happens, that we didn't know what was going on and didn't intervene early enough. But it happens all the time, and I'm sure you probably see it even in friendships, where two people can just be going at each other, two good friends, and they just go head to head. And as a good friend, intervene, step in, and it's amazing how much people's minds open up when they're not so focused on the one person with the counter view. All of a sudden, when there's three of us, all of us can learn something different, and it makes it a lot easier to compromise and come to a good resolution. Yes?
Hi, my name is Doug Smith, and I'm a first-year MBA student, and I wanted to also thank you for taking the time to come down here and share your experiences with us. And the one thing I'd like to know is, how did you position yourself during your career to make the next move to higher levels? Was it just through hard work and hoping that people noticed you and your performance and moved you up, or did you actually position yourself at different points in time to try to move to the next level?
I think in a profession like public accounting or even the law profession, I guess when you come into it, you think the ultimate success is if you decide to make partner. And probably the one thing I had focused on once I decided I wanted to stay and make a career of the profession was to make partner. So therefore, thinking about what do I need to do to make partner, what are the expectations of a partner, what kind of skills and experiences are they looking for among the senior managers to make partner. I was clearly focused on that from the time I was probably about 29 years old, and I made partner at 31. And there's a matrix around that in terms of what are our expectations, what kind of experiences do we expect someone to have. Beyond that, I can honestly say I never positioned myself or thought about the next role. The opportunities came. And frankly, I think that's a benefit, because I think organizationally, if you're always edging for planning the next step, some people might say, well, that's what you have to do to get ahead. I don't believe that. I believe that if you are always thinking the next step, those around you wonder how long you're with them. And in many organizations, your success and the firm's success is dependent upon the team effort. If I'm on a basketball team and I don't know whether this guy is going to be there when we come down court or not, or whether he's thinking about something else, we're not going to succeed. So I'm probably it's not going to be the same team dynamics. If you believe the team is all together and we're all working for the same goal, and if you do really well, someone will identify you and will present an opportunity to you. So at least my personal experience was not to be looking for the next step. Good opportunities will come up. There's enough. There's always people out there looking for folks to take on another challenge. And if you're the right person for the job, they'll tap you on the shoulder. If the opportunity becomes known, you can speak up at that time. But at least in the organizations I've been in, the firms I've been in, the environment we work in, I would always be skeptical if I saw someone kind of planning too much for the next step. I think in any team-based environment, that can be a real problem. But I'm sure there are probably others with contrary views than that. I thought I saw someone's hand up there.
Hey, Mike, thanks a lot for being here. My name's Jeff. I'm a first-year student. I have a number of questions, but I'm only going to narrow it down to two, if I can be a little greedy, but not too much. The first question is, we've seen this vast change in the accounting industry over the last several years. Is it a good time to be in the accounting industry? Is it a good time for you to be managing it? That's question 1A and 1B. And then number two.
He's figured out a way how to get 4 into 2.
The one thing we all have in common in here is we all go to BC. Many of us aren't going to be in the accounting industry, but what's one way that you leverage your BC relationships in the business world, and what's a good way for those of us recently new to BC to start leveraging those relationships?
I'll take the last one first. I just was telling the professor I came here from a meeting with the CEO of one of our clients. The fellow had just been named CEO 6 weeks ago. I hadn't met him before. And in the first 5 minutes of the conversation, I heard him say something. I thought, oh, were you a BC guy? And we're off and running. So the meeting I thought would be 45 minutes and went an hour and a half, and probably 45 minutes of that was BC. When you make it's amazing out in the community, particularly in the Boston area, although my daughter's working in New York and she finds it's true in New York as well. Be proud of the fact you're connected with BC and let other people know it, because the network out there is phenomenal. Certainly in this community, it has enabled me to call upon someone, get a meeting simply because I was a BC guy, and I knew they were BC. And I was able to just kind of call upon that, and certainly of my generation and even a few years ahead of me, most of the students then were commuter students, working class families, came up the hard way, and frankly, they love trying to help somebody who they thought followed the same routes. I mean, we won a $3 million audit client 4 years ago, and I got a breakfast meeting with that guy for just that reason. He grew up in Watertown. I'd never met him. I really wanted to meet him. Made a call. Actually, I called a friend of his who was a BC guy also that I knew. Made the connection for me, got me the breakfast meeting, and the guy gave me an hour in his schedule, and after that hour, when he saw all the connections we had, similarities we had in our lives, he said, brought in his CFO, told me to put a team together, and I told the CFO to kind of get us prepared to do a proposal. It just is amazing. That was an unusual one, but it was a relationship we have today, and it's a very highly valued relationship that started with me thinking about the BC connection, thinking, okay, I know this guy's BC. I don't know him. I'm starting to think about who else would have been in his class or around his time. Called one of those guys and who was a friend, and he made it happen. Get to know your classmates. Stay in touch with them. Even after you leave here, you have an experience with them for a year or two in school, but stay in touch, because they're going to be looking for friends a couple of years down the road. You're going to be looking for friends in the business field that can lead to business. It's always good to be able to call on someone you already know, or to find out if they can help you make a call someplace else. They may be in an organization you're trying to penetrate. They're in there at a mid-level. Call in, get some friendly guidance as to how you might be able to get to the next level. Now I forget what 2A and 1A and 1B were.
The accounting profession.
Pardon me?
The accounting profession.
Oh, the accounting. This is, career-wise, it's a great time to be in the accounting profession. Each of the firms has more business than we can deal with, literally. We have one of the biggest challenges we're facing is capacity management. We hired 320 off of the campus for the Boston office this year. 320, mostly undergrads, into the Boston office alone. 3 years ago, that was probably 175. So we're looking for lots of people. But we have a capacity issue because we can't possibly serve all the clients that want our services right now. So for 3 years, for the last 3 years, we've been actually selecting out of certain assignments, telling clients we can't stand for reappointment. And that's also happening with the other 3 big 4 firms. So we've got tremendous business opportunities. It's a challenging time. As I said earlier, the accountants are getting more time in the boardroom than we've ever had in our lives. That puts us at the center of what the company's thinking about, at the center of what they're worried about, what their risks are, where they want to take the business. That gives us an opportunity to think about how we might, knowing what their strategy is for 5 years, 10 years down the road, while we might be auditing historical financial statements, having a sense of where they want to go, we have business perspectives of other clients that may have already been there, may have tried to do that, may have done it successfully, may have entered into a market that they haven't been in before. So it gives us an opportunity to make a more lasting, more valuable relationship than simply being their auditor or tax advisor, just because we are getting a lot more attention and interest, and we can meet with virtually any CEO, any chairman of the board, audit committee chair. If we call, they want to take the call and they want to know, what are we calling about? When do we want to meet? It's a great time to be in the profession. It's growing. It's challenging. Don't know whether this is simply a bubble or whether it's going to be like this for the next 5 years. But I guess after reflecting on a 35-year career, everything goes in cycles. We're in a very steep upcycle now. It's probably been 5 years consecutive, but it certainly is a very, very good time to. Each of the firms in the profession are having great years financially. But as I say, I've never in my career had a time when we were turning down business, and I mean, clients that want to give you a $500,000 recurring assignment, and you say, I can't do it. We used to kill for a $100,000 assignment. It's a huge challenge, and we're not sure what the long-term dynamics are. Think about having been in the business my whole career. I've always fought and hustled and tried to find new business, and now for 3 years in a row trying to go the other way, trying to get rid of some business so we can continue to do good work on what we've got. And then think about 5 years from now, what's this going to mean to us? Can we go back and knock on the doors again of those businesses that we exited during this period of time? I don't know. What kind of damage are we doing on the way out? Are we exiting with in a responsible, respectful way, or are we being arrogant and leaving bad feelings in the way? If we exit in an arrogant way, we're too busy, you guys aren't big enough, you're not good enough, or whatever, that'll have long-term effects because you'll never go back to that company again. On the other hand, if you do it professionally, respectfully, circumstances change. You may have an opportunity to get back in there again. So that's frankly one of the challenges we're dealing with day to day, real time, over the last 3 years.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
Again, thank you for coming out. My name is Arisha, BC MBA, just like the rest of us, and also BC undergrad. Before you differentiated between the role of leadership and the role of management, I was wondering if you could expand a bit on the differences between the two.
Yeah, I guess when I think of leadership, I really think in terms of moving the hearts and minds and spirit of people to go in a particular way and do it in the way that leadership wants them to do it, to embrace a strategy. I think to embrace the strategy, it's one thing to accept a strategy, it's another thing to embrace it. Embracing it, as you move in an organization and change a strategy, you really need everybody. One or two leaders aren't going to make it happen. So an effective leader has got to be able to move the spirit of everybody else in that same direction. As one person rowing alone, those arms get tired in a hurry. But the power and the speed that comes from everyone rowing in the same direction, getting with it and moving it, you just get huge momentum. You make a change much faster when you get people all bought into it. It's much more powerful. But that's the issue of big picture, I guess, I think in terms of moving the spirit of the people to win their hearts and minds to go do something different. Management is about how do you execute the tactics? How do you manage the day-to-day operations and measure our success towards reaching those goals? So that's much more at a very tactical level, very operational level, day-to-day results and management. That's, you've already set the strategy, you're already moving in a direction. Now this is a lot more about measuring our success, benchmarking us. It's at a totally different level. It's not about hearts and minds. It's really down to the labor. It's down to just getting things done successfully, and how effectively are we doing it. And at that point then, once you do the benchmarking, how could we do it better? And again, that's management in terms of fine-tuning the efficiency, the effectiveness of the organization, maybe even the structure around how we're doing it. But it isn't changing hearts and minds and trying to get people to really break out and do something very different. Is that deeper?
We have time for one more question. Anybody want to do it?
Yeah, we have one here.
Hi, Mr. Costello. Thank
Hi.
you for coming. My name is Elsa. I'm an MBA MSA student. And a couple of days ago, I was reading The Heights, and there was an article targeted, I believe, towards seniors and how they should go about choosing a future career profession. And it outlined 3 questions. The first one was, what are you good at? The second one, what are you passionate about? And the third one was, how will you help society? How will it benefit society? And I was wondering how you take into account the third question, because I'm still trying to figure out how to answer those questions for myself.
Sure. I think if it's focused on the individual, how you will benefit society, well, certainly in what we do day to day, in the job I'm doing now as a CPA in a firm that reports on a lot of the largest public companies, how we're benefiting society in what we do, and therefore what our people are doing in executing this is helping improve the trust of people in the corporate markets, the financial markets, that the failures we had in the last 5 or 6 years, corporate failures, frauds, et cetera, really created a lot of distrust of people in relying on the financial information and what management was telling them about the different investments that they were making. We suffered greatly in the U.S. As a result of all that mistrust. So frankly, what we do every day as accountants is help solidify the ability for those capital markets to be trusted, to make it so that people around the world, it isn't just within the U.S., but people around the world invest in the U.S. markets. So for them to be able to rely upon the financial statements and controls of the companies that are being reported on in the U.S. that they're investing in helps society. That's at the kind of the macro level in terms of the essence of what public accounting firms are doing. At the down on the ground, I think we all, at least we certainly espouse within PwC in Boston, that we all have a responsibility to give back into our community. That our ultimate success as a business is very much dependent upon the success of our community. And we can be the best accounting firm in the world. If the Boston business community and the Massachusetts economic environment isn't good in terms of inviting in business, making it business worthy, and if we don't have an educated workforce, and if we don't have people that can fill all the jobs for the good companies around here to continue to expand here, then our business will deteriorate as well. We can only be as successful as our market is successful. And that's not just our clients, but it's also the future numbers of people coming along in the workforce to keep Massachusetts what it has been, which is high knowledge content, great educated people, great people to have in all the technical areas, engineering, science, mathematics, et cetera. So our giving back and trying to encourage our people to do things, to give back in the community, is with that in mind, that there are things we can do to help promote early youth education, help the youth in families that frankly are come from the more socio-economically challenged families, by going back and giving back some of what we've achieved, some of the success we've had, spending time volunteering, tutoring, volunteering at different charitable organizations around town. We're helping position other people, next generations, for their success. And frankly, again, it's just a circle. If they're successful, we have more educated people, we continue to have a strong population, we continue to have the economic workforce around here that we have, Boston will continue to grow, our company will continue to grow, and there's good opportunities for all of our people. So at the entity level, there's certainly things that we're doing that we think help society in terms of the importance of the capital markets in a democratic country like the United States, a free country, free market country. The importance of the capital markets is critical to our success. And down at the ground, in terms of just doing things to give back into the community in order to just help the workforce and help the future generations to make sure we perpetuate the strong economic machine that has been around here that provides good life, good work life for people in our community. Are we running out of time, or are we?
Well, very much.
Thank you for coming. It's nice to have you here. My name is Namho. I'm from South Korea. I worked in both in public accounting and corporate accounting, and from my experience, most clients don't like CPAs as a profession because they consume a lot of time, not only their time but also clients' time, and they ask a lot of questions and money. So my question is, CPAs work for not only for their own client but also for general public, and because of that they have a lot of conflict with client sometimes. So how do you handle the conflict with client, and what is most important in dealing with pursuing greater good and also serving client at the same time?
Yeah, well, it is that's the crux of where the challenge is with we're in a regulated world. Public accounting is a regulated business now. The Public Accounting Oversight Board regulates our industry, comes in and reviews our work, can pull the firm's license in terms of its ability to practice, or could pull my individual license as an audit partner if they came in and reviewed my work and thought I was substandard or whatever. The first and foremost is we must do what we think is the right thing to do. We must have the highest quality of work. We must conform to the professional standards, and we must follow corporate governance models. And that means, therefore, we are reporting to the board. We are talking to the audit committee about everything we're concerned about, any weaknesses we see in their organization, any place where we think that although their accounting method may be acceptable, that we think there's a better way to report it that they ought to be considering, or at least telling them what the options are, particularly pointing towards the ones that we think are better, because there are options. It's not just one method. There are some cases where there are multiple methods, but there may be one that gives a fairer presentation on reporting on the results. With that is going to come some conflict, because there are people whose compensation programs may be tied to current year earnings or earnings over a 5-year period or movement in the stock price from one period to another. And when people have measures around incentives like that, frankly, I think that's where corporate America faced a lot of the problems and a lot of the failures that have occurred. When you look at what likely drove the behavior of some of these people who caused the corporate frauds, who perpetrated the corporate frauds, it ultimately came to they weren't hitting their numbers. They weren't getting the numbers that they told analysts they were going to get to. And they may have thought they'd get there next quarter, so they'd do something to kind of get through this quarter to kind of be creative about it. Well, they came to next quarter and they still weren't there, except now they were further behind. And once you start down a slippery slope like that, you're in trouble. So we're going to have some conflict, and we're going to run into some folks in management who think we ought to be a little bit more flexible and that what they're doing is acceptable. We can't, if we start accepting that, then our own reputation and integrity will be questioned. The capital markets will be back where they were of not being able to rely upon what's being reported. And that just can't be. So consequently, we're going to, we have to just manage relationships. And sometimes you have to manage through conflicts. And sometimes relationships become much better when you have these inflection points where you have really challenging dialogue. And in some cases, you bring in the board and say, look, here's what management is trying to influence us to do. Here's what this is what we're going to do. You guys need to look at your organization and decide, what's your culture? What are your values? Because frankly, if you're not going where we're going, we're not going to be going there together, because our firm is not willing to do that. And that's a great inflection point for boards to really stop and think about how are they incenting management, why would management be trying to do that. No board member is going to want to put their assets on the line, and they could be personally liable in shareholder lawsuits. So, that dialogue is healthy. It's uncomfortable when we're in it. It's never good to have, you don't look for confrontations, right? That's not our nature. But they're going to come. We know they're going to come, and we just have to be strong, stand up, be courageous, and have the challenging dialogue. And most of the cases I've experienced, certainly over the last few years, when we've had that challenging dialogue, the board agrees with the more conservative view and certainly doing the right thing. And some heads roll. They realize that they've got some people in the organization that may be starting to go someplace that could get them all in trouble. I guess as a bit of advice, going back to the advice that someone asked before that you might give, reflecting on these corporate frauds, almost every one of them had the characteristics I described. They weren't going to hit analyst numbers, or they weren't going to hit numbers that finance had promised to the CEO. There were going to be consequences maybe around incentive compensation or to stock price, and they were all looking at driving stock price. What they were all, many cases were trying to do is to put off facing a problem. They had a problem today. There was a reason why they weren't making the numbers. It's a problem anytime you try to defer facing up to a problem. Take your problems head on, deal with them earlier, not later. They're smaller today than they're going to be in the future. You try and defer it, it's like adding an interest payment, an interest rate onto it, and it's probably going to be a very high interest rate. The problem you're going to be facing tomorrow is just going to be that much bigger, and it's probably going to be less forgiving, because if someone gets back to the facts and says, you knew about this a year ago, and I'm only hearing about it now, take your lumps. Take them early, be honest, tell them what the problem is, and tell them what you're going to do about it to fix it. You'll feel some short-term pain, but it'll be over. And frankly, you'll be given credit for being honest, transparent, and owning up to the problem. But if you look at, and as you read about corporate failures, I'd say you're probably going to see at the root of every one of them was someone just deferring a problem, thinking it would go away, wish it would go away, making some business assumptions that in 2 years' time we'll be out of this. Forget about it. Just own up to it, deal with it, pay your dues now, and get it out of the way. I mean, that's a piece of advice. Frankly, it probably works in your personal life too. At least, I think in most cases, just face up to whatever the issue is and don't defer it.
Okay. Are we done?